There are places that do not need to be named to feel sacred. They exist through silence, through the feeling that when you enter, every familiar rhythm of life must slow down. In these places, the sky seems lower, the wind carries the cold breath of ancient stone, and the light spreads slowly, as if time itself is adjusting to match the rhythm of the land. This is one of the highest and harshest environments where humans have chosen to live for generations. The air grows thinner with altitude, but the presence of nature becomes more vivid than ever. The mountains have stood still for tens of millions of years, while people have learned to survive not through speed, but through patience and restraint. Every step carries weight, every breath holds meaning. The strength of this land does not lie in display. It lies in its ability to make us listen and accept. Some places are not meant to be conquered, but to remind us of the limits of ambition. This journey does not take you higher, but deeper into the stillness where nature, belief, and time become one. This is unseen Tibet, where the greatest strength is the quiet endurance that has lasted through the ages.
Let's explore AnyAni animals.
The first breath, the roof of the world and the faith closest to the sky. Some places are not awakened by sound, but by light. When the first sunlight touches the plateau, it does not burst or blaze. Instead, it spreads slowly, like a long breath after ancient sleep. Along the ridges and the wind-blown passes, prayer flags begin to flutter. Thin threads of fabric catch the mountain breeze and reflect a kind of light so pure it seems to glow from within. No one speaks a prayer aloud, yet the entire space feels as if it is whispering on behalf of the vast continent below. In this place, people believe the sky is no longer far because faith has brought it close. The plateau stretches at an average elevation of about 4,000 meters above sea level, with many communities living year-round above 3,600 meters. It is one of the most demanding natural environments where people have adapted over time. The lower air pressure significantly reduces available oxygen, forcing the human body to adjust its heartbeat, its breathing, and even the pace of daily life. Yet in this scarcity, the air holds a rare clarity. It has little moisture, and in many areas it is far from major industrial centers, so local emissions are minimal. In places, the air can feel cold, dry, and strikingly clean. For the people who live here, this is more than biology. It is a spiritual condition. They believe that at this height, the earth and the sky are just one breath apart. To live fully each day is to meditate without speaking. Beneath this pure sky lies a vast frozen system that plays a vital role across Asia. Scientists call this region the Third Pole because it holds the largest stores of snow and ice outside the two polar regions. Tens of thousands of glaciers and frozen lakes act as massive natural reservoirs, feeding more than 10 major rivers. These rivers begin in the cold silence of this plateau and travel far, sustaining the lives of more than 1 billion people. From a scientific view, it is a delicate water system, fragile in the face of climate change. From a spiritual view, it is a sacred offering. Each drop of melting ice is believed to carry a blessing, flowing to places that may never see snow. In this wide and high space, people do not try to dominate. They try to belong. Nomads build tents from the hair of the yak, a material shaped by centuries of adaptation. Yak hair is thick, warm, durable, and able to withstand the dry wind and long cold seasons. Each morning, as the wind begins to rise, their hands reach for the prayer wheels and turn them slowly. For them, each rotation is not only ritual. It is a way to release prayer into the air, trusting that the wind will carry it farther than any step can go. On the mountain slopes and near monasteries, prayer flags appear as signs of a quiet spiritual presence. The 5 colors are not decoration. They represent the 5 elements that make up the universe. Sky, air, fire, water, and earth are lifted into the wind to remind us that harmony, not force, holds the world together. And then, across the rocky ground, a figure known to the plateau walks past. The yak, thick with fur and broad in form, moves slowly but steadily, just like the rhythm of this land. It was the first creature to prove that life here is not about resisting the highland, but about learning how to live with it. This sacred breath does not stop at the grasslands. It rises with the land, with the wind, and with the silent fluttering of fabric toward the mountains that never fade. There, nature is not just present. It is waiting to be heard in the greatest wonders that very few have ever truly seen. The second breath, the sacred center, and the eternal wonder. Mount Kailash, the mountain without human footprints. The breadth of the plateau seems to converge most strongly at Mount Kailash, a massive rock rising alone in a desolate land, where people do not look upward with eyes of conquest, but with absolute silence. Even from a great distance, Kailash does not resemble any other peak. Its form is almost perfectly symmetrical, with 4 distinct faces aligned to the 4 cardinal directions, creating the impression of a natural pyramid placed precisely at the heart of the Tibetan sky. At an elevation of 6,638 meters above sea level, Kailash is not among the tallest peaks in the region, yet it is the mountain with the greatest spiritual weight. What makes Kailash truly unique is not its height, but the fact that it has never been conquered. In the history of modern exploration, there is no official record of anyone having set foot on the summit of Kailash. Not because of a lack of technical ability, but because of a rare consensus across cultures and faiths. For Tibetan Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, and the ancient Bon tradition, the summit is an absolutely sacred space where humans are not permitted to intrude. Climbing Kailash is seen as an act that would disrupt the cosmic order. As a result, this mountain exists as one of the rare exceptions in the modern world, where almost every other great peak has been scaled. Instead of going upward, people choose to go around. The circumambulation path, known as the Kora around Kailash, is about 52 kilometers long, at an average altitude of more than 4,500 meters, and is considered one of the most demanding pilgrimages in Asia. The thin air makes every breath heavy, the heartbeat faster than normal, and each footstep must be placed with intention. On this route, pilgrims must cross passes rising above 5,600 meters, where fierce winds and sudden temperature changes force both body and spirit to adapt together. In the spiritual view of the region, completing a full Kora around Kailash is believed to wash away the gravest karmic burdens of a lifetime. The number 108 appears as a symbol of completion, representing a cycle perfected for both body and mind. Very few people are able to complete 108 circuits in a single lifetime, but the existence of this number has transformed the journey into a long-term vow rather than a physical goal. Along the way are ancient stone markers, small streams fed by melting snow and ice from above, and countless prayer flags faded by wind and time, all marking thousands of years of continuous pilgrimage. At Kailash, time is not measured by days or hours, but by the number of circuits walked, the number of times one stops to take a deep breath, and the moments when a person realizes that some mountains do not exist to be conquered. They exist to remind humanity of its limits. And here, at this place, the breath of the plateau reaches its highest concentration, ready to flow onward into sacred waters and the eternal wonders that still lie hidden ahead. Rivers born from the sacred highlands and the lifeblood of a continent. It is not the mountain peaks, but the water that carries the breath of the high plateau the farthest. Around Mount Kailash, snow and ice melt with the seasons, soaking into ancient rock and forming small flows that silently branch out in 4 different directions. There is no thunder or dramatic waterfall at the source, only the patience of water shaping survival paths that stretch for thousands of kilometers. In local belief, this is the moment the sacred breath leaves the mountain to enter the human world. The water flowing to the northwest becomes the Indus River, one of the oldest river systems tied to the birth of early civilizations in South Asia. At more than 3,100 kilometers long, the Indus winds through arid lands where natural rainfall is low and life depends almost entirely on seasonal flow. Water from the upper reaches carries fertile silt, sustaining a lush valley between desert and semi-desert, allowing people to settle, raise livestock, and cultivate crops for many millennia. Another branch leaves the highlands to become the Sutlej River, a major regulator for the Indus system. The Sutlej has the character of a snow and glacier-fed river, with flows that rise sharply during the melt season and shift again with the monsoon. That variability has long shaped farming calendars and water management downstream, where communities learn to read the river's timing rather than assume it will stay the same. To the east, a more powerful stream becomes the Brahmaputra River, one of the largest rivers in the world by volume. At about 2,900 kilometers in length, the Brahmaputra cuts through deep canyons and complex terrain, creating valleys rich in biodiversity. Along its course are riverine forests, wetlands and floodplains, where migratory birds, freshwater fish, and many wildlife species rely directly on the annual rise and fall of the water. The fourth stream, the Karnali River, flows south and becomes a major tributary of the Ganges system. The Karnali travels through rugged mountains and remote valleys where many communities still maintain traditional ways of life. For them, the river is not only a source of water, but a natural transportation route, a territorial boundary, and the spiritual center of community life. What these 4 rivers share is not only where they begin, but their role in the climate and ecology of Asia. These river systems that originate from the sacred highlands supply water directly or indirectly to more than 1 billion people, while maintaining vital ecological corridors for wildlife. When the water leaves its source, it carries not only life, but the imprint of the sacred. And in the broken, shifting terrain that lies ahead, those flows will begin to fall again, forming deep gorges and waterfalls where the story of Tibet unfolds into yet another deeper chapter. The petrified city and the kingdom buried by wind. When we leave behind rivers in motion, the breath of the sacred suddenly becomes dry and still, as if time itself has slowed. At the western edge of the plateau, Zander Earth Forest appears not quite like a forest, not quite like a mountain, but like an ancient city built from earth and wind. Thousands of earth pillars, many rising tens of meters, stand close together, forming a natural maze across a vast landscape. These columns were shaped over a long geological time by uplift and erosion, then carved by water and weathering, with wind and freeze-thaw cycles refining their edges and exposing ancient layers like open pages of a book. From a distance, the landscape looks exactly like a petrified city, with watchtowers, walls, and corridors, inspiring ancient peoples to believe that this was once the forgotten palace of gods set in a cold desert. Hidden within this land that seems to contain only wind and stone are the remains of the kingdom of Guje, a realm that existed approximately from the 10th century to the 17th century. For many centuries, Guj was an important cultural and religious center in western Tibet, situated on trade routes linking the plateau to the Indian subcontinent. The ruins that remain show that this was not a small or temporary kingdom. Fortresses built on mountain slopes, stepped palaces, and networks of caves along cliff faces reflect extraordinary social organization and architectural skill under harsh conditions. What makes Guje most remarkable lies inside the caves. Hundreds of surviving murals were painted directly onto rock walls using natural mineral pigments. Though subject to centuries of dry, cold, and strong winds, these paintings still preserve intricate lines depicting Buddhas, bodhisattvas, mandalas, and ritual scenes. The artistic style here is not uniform, but clearly blends influences from ancient India, Nepal, and the Kashmir region. This cultural fusion shows that Guje was once a major crossroads, where ideas, art, and religion traveled with caravans of merchants and monks. The collapse of the kingdom still holds gaps in the historical record. Chronicles suggest that Guj declined in the 17th century amid military conflict and political upheaval. And in a place this cold and arid, where rainfall is scarce and winds can be relentless, the margin for stability was always thin, with sharp temperature swings between day and night, shaping how people could live and build. As centralized systems weakened and people left, wind and sand quickly erased signs of life, leaving behind a civilization nearly buried in silence. Today, Zander is not only a geological wonder, but also a repository of human memory before nature. Large mammals are not common sights in this arid highland, but desert-adapted wildlife does persist, and birds still appear above the pillars, using the ridges and spires as watchtowers. Occasionally, the tracks of antelope or desert foxes cross the sand, reminding us that even in seemingly barren environments, life quietly persists. Among the petrified city and the faded mural walls, modern visitors walk with the sensation of crossing between two worlds. On one side is geological time, measured in millions of years. On the other side is human history, measured in only a few centuries. And it is at that intersection where the breath of Tibet is no longer wind or water, but memory, quietly waiting to be heard before the journey continues deeper into the chasms and wonders that have not yet been revealed. The depth of time and the water that never stops falling. There are places where the land does not unfold before your eyes, but collapses beneath your feet. When water leaves the high plateau and is forced into the deepest folds of the Earth's crust, the breath of the sacred no longer feels gentle. It becomes compressed, powerful, and weighty. It is at this moment that the Yarlung Changpo Grand Canyon appears as an absolute boundary between the familiar surface and the almost unreachable depths of the planet. With a maximum depth reported up to about 6,009 meters, this canyon is often described as more than twice as deep as the Grand Canyon. The entire system stretches for about 505 kilometers, winding through the rugged eastern Himalaya. The river at the bottom carries immense force and has cut into bedrock over geological time, creating steep, V-shaped walls and narrow corridors that leave many stretches shaded for much of the day. The combination of depth, steepness, and relentless water flow has turned this place into one of the most extreme geological landscapes still in existence. What makes this canyon extraordinary is not just the numbers, but the parts that humans have not yet seen. The terrain is so forbidding that parts of the gorge were long considered nearly impenetrable to outsiders. Expeditions have documented major waterfalls in the Pemmico region, including Rainbow Falls and the so-called Hidden Falls, and high water during the rainy season can rapidly transform conditions in the gorge, keeping the landscape in a state of constant change. On the high rock walls, raptors, including golden eagles, can sometimes be seen riding rising air along the canyon. In Tibetan communities, eagles are often treated as symbolic or sacred birds, woven into the idea of sky, height, and spiritual presence, as if carrying meaning between the high realms above and the world below. Their presence also reflects a uniquely rich canyon ecosystem, where microclimates change rapidly with elevation, allowing subtropical forests to exist just below snow-capped peaks. Humans rarely venture deep into the canyon, not for a lack of curiosity, but because this place is not meant for conquest. Ancient paths skirt only the upper edges, leaving the depths to water and wind to continue their work. And then, after the river completes its journey tearing through stone, that breath slows and opens into glimmering lakes ahead, where water no longer falls but lies still, reflecting the highland sky. There, earth and sky meet in absolute quiet, preparing for a new chapter where the breath of Tibet shifts from force to profound peace. The third breath, when the plateau becomes life. Kham and Nyingchi, where green forest meets white snow. There is a moment along the journey eastward when you realize that the plateau is no longer as harsh as before, but it has not become gentle either. Here, the breath of Tibet becomes softer and wetter, carrying the scent of damp earth and forest leaves. From mountain slopes that once seemed composed only of rock and wind, lush green suddenly spreads downward, covering steep hillsides and weaving into deep valleys, creating one of the most striking natural contrasts on the planet. This is the region of Kham and Nyingchi, often called, more evocatively than geographically, the Switzerland of Tibet. Unlike most of the plateau, which receives little rain, this area is strongly influenced by monsoon winds from the south. Annual rainfall here is significantly higher than in central Tibet, providing ideal conditions for both subtropical and temperate forests to thrive. In many valleys of Nyingchi, elevations are only around 3,000 meters, much lower than the average plateau altitude. Yet just above, eternal snow-capped peaks still stand tall, creating a dramatic ecological layering within just a few kilometers. This is one of the very few places on Earth where deep green forests and perennial snow exist side by side in the same scene. The ecological richness here is clear in the number of plant and animal species. Biological surveys describe this region as one of Tibet's richest forest zones, with exceptionally high plant diversity across subtropical to temperate belts, including many species tied to the Himalayas and East Asia. The forests can host Asiatic black bears, musk deer, and primates such as snub-nosed monkeys in the broader southeastern Tibet range, alongside many forest birds, forming a complex and vibrant ecosystem. The presence of these species shows that this region serves as a vital biological corridor, linking the plateau's ecosystems with the lower mountain regions to the south. Within this green realm, the presence of humans does not vanish, but blends uniquely with the forest. Ancient monasteries can appear like small fortresses, clinging to mountain slopes or tucked into forest folds, with thick walls built for endurance. In the wetter eastern plateau, roofs are often designed to shed summer rains, reflecting how architecture adapts to mist, storms, and long wet seasons. When the wind blows through the canopy, the rustling of leaves joins the steady chant of mantras, creating a slow rhythm very different from the winds on the open plateau. For the local people, This landscape is not just a place to live, but a gift from the gods, a symbol of rebirth and balance after harsh lands. What makes this region truly special is not just its beauty, but the sense of transition. This is where Tibet begins to change character, from dry to moist, from empty to dense, from absolute stillness to continuous life. People, animals, and forests coexist in a flexible state, where faith does not stand apart from nature, but flows into every tree trunk, every stream, and every morning mist. And it is in this contrast that the breath of Tibet does not weaken, but becomes richer, preparing to open new rhythms of life waiting ahead. Blooming snowflowers and the moment Tibet comes back to life. Spring in eastern Tibet does not announce itself with a signal, but with color. After many months of rock and soil locked in cold, the lower valleys suddenly shift their rhythm in a quiet but decisive way. Amid the patches of snow still clinging to the mountain slopes and the lingering chill, pink hues appear unexpectedly, spreading along rivers and hillsides like a soft wave breaking long silence. It is nature's own declaration that the cycle has opened a new chapter. This phenomenon is most vivid in late March and early April, when the climate in the eastern valleys reaches a rare balance. In the Nyingchi area, many valleys lie at elevations between 2,900 and 3,100 meters, much lower than the central plateau. Daytime temperatures rise just enough to trigger the flowering cycle of wild peach trees, while cold nights slow the pace of bloom, stretching this moment across the valley. Snow still covers the peaks above, creating a rare ecological tapestry where winter and spring exist together in a single scene. The wild peach trees here are individuals long adapted to high mountain conditions. They can withstand frost and flower early in the narrow window before the summer rains settle in. In peak bloom, vast stands of trees can open almost at once, turning the valleys into pale pink fields that sharply contrast with lingering snow and the deep green forest beyond. To biologists, this is a crucial stage for pollination, when warming days begin to reactivate insect movement and the lower forest layers grow busier again, reconnecting flowers, insects, and birds into the season's first working network. For local communities, this blooming carries meaning beyond biology. In Tibetan Buddhism, flowers opening after a long winter can be read as a quiet symbol of impermanence and renewal, a reminder that change is built into everything. During peach blossom season, people gather in the valleys for outdoor celebration and local cultural events, and prayer flags often appear in the landscape, letting wind carry blessings through the new spring air. Pilgrims walk through the flower forests, praying for a blessed new year and witnessing the land's revival with their own senses. The festive atmosphere here is not loud or showy. The dominant sounds remain the flowing meltwater, gentle wind, and the steady chants resonating among the trees. Children play by the streams, adults sit quietly beneath the blossoms, and monks move slowly among the crowd, all sharing a slower pace of life than usual. This moment lasts only a few weeks, but its brevity makes it all the more special. When the petals fall, the valleys return to their familiar green, leaving in people's memories a gentle reminder that even on a harsh plateau, life always finds a way to bloom. Three rivers flowing side by side, and the path that carries the breath of compassion. There is a stretch of the world where the map seems to defy every familiar logic. Instead of spreading apart, three massive rivers flow side by side within remarkably close distance, held in place by mountain ranges that rise like invisible walls. For more than 300 kilometers, roughly 200 miles, these waters form one of the deepest and narrowest canyon systems on the planet, where geology exposes the primal power of plateau uplift and erosion over millions of years. This phenomenon is so rare that geographers consider it unique. Very few places on Earth allow three major river basins to exist in parallel without merging. These three rivers are the Mekong River, the Salween River, and the Yangtze River. Each follows its own course and carries its own destiny, but all begin in the high mountains of eastern Tibet. The Mekong will travel about 4,350 kilometers to nourish the vast plains and ecosystems of Southeast Asia. The Salween spends much of its journey in wild canyons and is often described as one of the least fragmented large river systems in Asia. The Yangtze becomes the most important water axis of China, intertwined with history, economy, and the lives of hundreds of millions of people. Where they run side by side, the canyons plunge thousands of meters deep, creating microclimates that change dramatically within just a few kilometers, with dense forests at the bottom and cold grasslands on the higher slopes. In the view of the Tibetan people, this is not merely a geological feature, but a set of spiritual pathways. Water carries teachings of compassion from the highlands, flowing through mountains and nations, spreading life to distant lands. For this reason, rivers are not seen as objects to be controlled, but as entities to be respected. Along these rugged canyons, humans early on established routes that follow the rocky slopes, using the rare narrow strips of land to travel. Most notable among these is the Tea Horse Road, an ancient trade route stretching thousands of kilometers, connecting the plateau with the Yunnan region and beyond. For centuries, tea and horses, along with goods such as salt, were transported by human and animal power along trails that hung above deep chasms. The caravans carried not only goods, but also scriptures, prayers, and customs, turning this road into an important channel of cultural and spiritual exchange. Many small monasteries rose along the way, serving as resting places for both body and mind. Today, when people look down on the three rivers flowing in parallel through the deep canyons, they see more than moving water. They see history, belief, and life moving together. From the lush contrasts and renewal of the eastern lands, that breath continues to spread, carrying vitality to the animals and plants across the entire plateau, preparing to open a new chapter where nature and wildlife take center stage in the story ahead. The fourth breath, when life becomes belief. The yak, the steady heartbeat of the plateau. In the vast and harsh expanse of the plateau, there is a quiet form of life that keeps everything moving. That is the yak. It does not rely on speed or dramatic strength. The yak exists through absolute endurance, perfectly adapted to elevations often exceeding 4,000 meters, where the air is thin, winds are fierce, and winters are long. Temperatures can drop below -20 degrees Celsius. Yet the yak continues to move slowly and steadily, as if the very breath of the land has merged with each step it takes. From a biological perspective, yaks possess rare traits that allow them to survive in low oxygen environments. Large lungs, a wide chest, and a circulatory system rich in red blood cells let them remain active at heights where many other animals cannot stay for long. Their thick double coat insulates against cold and blocks the wind, while strong skin and muscles help the yak hold firm on steep rocky slopes and icy terrain. An adult yak can weigh roughly 225 to 255 kilograms for females and 350 to 580 kilograms for males, while wild yaks can be far heavier. Yet its movement always conserves energy, reflecting a survival strategy shaped by the demands of the highlands. In human life, the yak is far more than livestock. It is a means of transport over high passes, a source of milk, butter, meat, and wool, and in regions with scarce wood, dried yak dung becomes the main fuel for warmth and cooking. For nomadic families, a herd of yaks is a direct measure of their ability to survive the winter. This relationship is not a simple form of exploitation, but a mutual dependency formed across generations. From this close bond, the yak has become a spiritual symbol. In Tibetan life, and within the religious world of Tibetan Buddhism, yaks appear in rituals and material culture, often standing for resilience and the quiet strength needed to endure the high plateau. The yak is not aggressive. It does not compete. It simply carries its burden and keeps moving. This image serves as a reminder that life on the plateau does not survive through conquest, but through the ability to endure and harmonize. Yaks also play a crucial role in the ecosystem. When grazing pressure stays moderate, their feeding and trampling can help shape alpine meadows and nutrient cycling, supporting the short growing season of highland grasses. When grazing becomes too intense, the same landscape can degrade, which is why balance matters here. Even the footprints of a yak herd help hold the meltwater from snow on the ground. In this quiet persistence, the yak becomes the steady heartbeat of the plateau, where the breath of Tibet is sustained not by violent force, but by life that bends respectfully before nature. The guardians of the plateau and the rhythm of life. On the vast plateau, where humans occupy only a tiny part of the survival picture, there are beings regarded as embodiments of natural order. They do not appear often before human eyes, but their existence shapes the way this land operates and how people understand the world around them. In Tibetan belief and storytelling, three animals are often invoked as living symbols of the mountains, the sky, and the earth. Hidden deep among rocky slopes and stretches of eternal snow is the snow leopard, one of the rarest predators on Earth. Snow leopards live mainly at elevations from 3,000 to more than 5,000 meters, where the air is thin and temperatures can drop very low. Their thick grey and silver coat with rosette patterns helps them blend perfectly with rock and snow, so much so that even locals rarely see them. Their long tail, nearly as long as the body, not only helps maintain balance on steep cliffs, but also wraps around the face for warmth while resting. In local belief, the snow leopard is seen as the protective spirit of the mountains, the guardian of balance, appearing or vanishing as a reminder that humans are only guests on this land. Above those mountain slopes, the sky belongs to the golden eagle. With a wingspan that can exceed 2 meters, this eagle soars by riding thermal updrafts, rising from the rugged terrain. Its extremely sharp vision allows it to spot prey from great distances, making the plateau sky an inseparable part of the predator ecosystem. In Tibetan communities, eagles are often viewed as powerful, liminal birds, linked to height, protection, and the space between earth and sky, and are treated with symbolic reverence in stories and local belief. On the broad ground below, another movement unfolds with a regularity like breath. It is the seasonal migration of the Tibetan antelope. Each year, tens of thousands of individuals travel hundreds of kilometers across grasslands at elevations above 4,000 meters in search of safe breeding grounds. Their light bodies, well-developed lungs, and efficient oxygen exchange make the Tibetan antelope one of the hoofed species best adapted to low oxygen environments. In spiritual life, the migrating herds are seen as the breath of the plateau, a sign that this land continues to renew itself and sustain life. The snow leopard maintains balance, the golden eagle connects sky and earth, and the Tibetan antelope sustains the rhythm of movement. These three species do not just represent biodiversity. They also reflect the way Tibetans view nature as a sacred living system, where every living being holds an irreplaceable role. Highland barley and sampa, the nourishment of earth and sky. When the movement of wildlife slows down, life on the plateau continues in a more steady and humble form. On small fields situated at elevations often above 3,600 meters, sometimes reaching more than 4,000 meters, Highland barley begins its brief but essential growth cycle. This is one of the highest altitude grains cultivated in the world, surviving short growing seasons, low temperatures, and intense sunlight. Where many other crops cannot take root, barley still manages to sprout, flower, and ripen before the cold season returns. Biologically, Highland barley has exceptional tolerance to cold, strong radiation and the other stresses of high elevation. Its growth cycle is often about 90 to 150 days, suited to the short period when the ground is free of frost. The barley grains are small, but energy-rich, containing abundant carbohydrates along with protein and fiber, meeting the high physical demands of life in this harsh environment. For these reasons, barley becomes the foundation of the traditional diet and holds a central role in Tibetan survival. From barley, sampa is made as a crystallization of life experience on the plateau. Roasted barley flour does not need to be cooked. It can simply be mixed with butter tea or hot water and eaten immediately. This simplicity reflects the nomadic and pilgrimage lifestyle, where each meal must be light but strong enough to sustain the body. Sampa appears in daily life, from quick breakfasts to long journeys over high passes in cold winds and falling snow. Yet sampa does more than nourish the body. In spiritual life, it carries sacred meaning. In offering rituals, sampa is often held in the hand and scattered into the air as a way of sending prayers to the Buddhas and protective forces. That gesture expresses gratitude to earth and sky, which have nourished people with small yet resilient seeds. Sampa thus becomes a symbol of comprehensive nourishment, sustaining physical life while strengthening spiritual faith. Growing barley at high altitude requires patience across generations. Arable land is limited, weather is unpredictable, and risks are high, but Tibetans have learned to read natural signs, choose suitable seeds, and save grains for the next season. Each harvest is not only the result of labor, but also proof that life can take root even in places that seem most unforgiving. From these simple symbols, the vitality of Tibet is preserved, quietly but steadily, through each cold season on the plateau. The final breath, when belief becomes eternal life. If there is a place where belief is not found in scriptures, but lives in the smallest movements of daily life, it is here. In this land, the deepest breath comes not from altitude or cold wind, but from the quiet repetition of actions that appear ordinary. Before the sun has risen above the mountain peaks, human hands have already touched soil, salt, color, and prayer beads, as a reminder that life can only continue when people live with faith. On the steep red cliffs of the southeastern plateau, the ancient salt fields of Markham have lasted more than 1,300 years. These are not flat salt pans, but terraced pools carved into the mountain slopes. Natural brine is channeled into shallow ponds and dried by the soft sun and thin winds of the plateau. Some households begin the harvest with a brief offering or a quiet prayer, because here salt is treated as more than a mineral, often spoken of as a gift carried by wind, sun, and the hidden springs beneath the rock. It is a gift of the land and the sky. Labor becomes ritual, and ritual gives labor a meaning that goes beyond material needs. The endurance of these salt fields shows how humans can live from nature while still honoring it deeply. Inside quiet monasteries, another kind of labor unfolds at an even slower pace. Thangka paintings are not created for display, but as acts of meditation. A single scroll can take several months or even more than 1 year to complete, depending on the complexity of the image and number of symbols. Pigments come from natural minerals, ground and blended with care, so that their color can last for centuries. When an artist paints each curve of a mandala or each detail of a sacred figure, it is not a personal expression, but a disciplined act of repeating sacred order. The process is seen as a deep meditation, where every stroke must be focused and precise. In daily life, belief also appears in numbers that carry sacred meaning. The number 108 is found everywhere as a rhythm of spiritual practice. Mantra beads number 108, with each rotation marking a full cycle of prayer. Inside the great Kumbum stupa at Gyantse, 9 levels rise like a vertical mandala, built with dozens of chapels, and traditionally described as having 108 doors or cells woven into its structure. This number is not mathematics, it is a symbol of completeness and inner balance. Even when far from the plateau, Tibetans carry that breath with them. In exile communities, belief is kept alive through education, tradition, and a quiet discipline of daily life. Children learn their language and sacred chants alongside modern subjects. Festivals are held not only to remember the past, but to protect identity in the present. This spiritual strength is not loud, but it is steady and lasting, like the land that gave birth to it. Looking back at the full journey, from mountains and rivers to forests, animals and people, every breath seems to gather here. There is no boundary between nature and belief, between labor and ritual. All of it becomes a sacred rhythm where life continues, not with grand sound, but with the steady breath of faith and harmony that does not fade. This journey does not end with a final stop, but with a reminder. Tibet is not just high mountains, long rivers, or creatures enduring cold wind. This place is a living example of how nature and humanity can coexist in respect and balance. Every breath on the plateau is the result of millions of years of geology, thousands of years of adaptation, and countless generations preserving faith through quiet daily actions. But what is most fragile is also what is most at risk. Ice is melting faster, rivers are changing their rhythms, habitats are shrinking, and the living symbols that once guarded this land face pressures like never before. Protecting nature is no longer a distant idea, but a choice in how we live, consume, and speak up. When a land like Tibet is harmed, it is not only a loss for that place, but a loss for the entire planet. If this story has touched you, turn that feeling into action. Care more for nature, support conservation efforts, and share values of respect for life. Every small choice can become part of a larger change. And if you feel that Unseen Tibet has given you a new perspective, remember to like, share, leave a comment, subscribe, turn on notifications, and send a super thanks to continue the journey with us in the stories ahead. Because when we listen together and protect together, the breath of nature will continue to be heard, steadfast and sacred, just like this land itself.